So is trust on the way back to the marketplace? As the former Fed chairman said, we are going to bring in the head of a leading independent investment banking firm now to see if he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. Peter J. Solomon joins us in studio, head obviously of your namesake firm, but your prior roles, we have to give out your past lives too. Vice chairman at Lehman, also deputy mayor of economic policy and developments under Mayor Koch. So we're really glad to have you in the studio with us, Peter. Through these lives, you have inside knowledge to Wall Street's current one as well, also government. Is the government doing the right thing with this rescue plan?
Well, it's doing the right thing about doing something. The rescue plan is quite awful. It has to be passed, however. We're in a period of extraordinary lack of confidence, lack of leadership, lack of almost everything. Alan Greenspan's right. There's light at the end of the tunnel. The problem is, how long is the tunnel?
Do you see sort of signs of optimism, as Greenspan alluded to there, for your own business?
Well, our own business is fine. It's not great, but it's fine because we're benefiting from something we expected for a long time, which is the major firms were all conflicted. They were doing things they shouldn't have been doing, and they're paying the piper, and people will turn more and more to independent firms. But that's, you know, all boats rise and all boats lower at the same time, and this is an ebb tide.
One thing, obviously you wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal recently called, you know, it's the credit stupid. And we actually have a graph we can show our viewers here about this record drop in commercial paper. And as we know, this is really the grease that sort of keeps corporate America's wheels moving. Is that the number one issue? Is this the number one obstacle to investors' willingness to get deals done?
Well, it's the number one obstacle to the economy. The world revolves around the funding of short-term paper, and short-term paper, there's almost $4 trillion of short-term paper before the enormous drop that you're alluding to. And that's paper that's rolled over every night, every other day by every corporation in the world. What has been inexplicable is the inability of the leadership of this country to explain that this so-called bailout, which is really even a rescue, which is a credit stabilization program, is trying to make the markets more stable so short-term paper can continue to trade. And it isn't, as you're showing.
Now, in this op-ed that we read, you call for sort of what's being known as now informally the Buffett plan. That is to say, the government making an effort to recapitalize banks directly through preferred shares, through purchasing preferred.
Right.
Is that, do you still think, the best way to go? Even if it's not going to happen,
I
that's
do.
your best idea?
I always thought it was. The model of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which ran from 1929 to roughly 1945, was a model that $3 billion was invested in preferred shares and $3 billion came back. And to me, it seemed like a much preferable way. The Treasury, for reasons which seem to me inexplicable, chose the route they chose.
So do you think it will pass?
It's got to pass. I have no idea whether it'll pass. There's such a failure of leadership, a failure to explain the simple premise of this bill, even the labeling, the marketing of it, calling it a bailout bill or even a rescue bill was ridiculous. They should have called it a stabilization plan or a small business stabilization plan. So the marketing of it has been a disaster.
And we also heard from our reporter in D.C. that not only is this a presidential election year, it's also an election year for a lot of the Congress people. Oh,
well, of course. The biggest problem is you have a lame duck who's a dead duck. And he has no power. He can't deliver. Congressmen are running for their own shelter, and there's some inexplicable votes on this negatively, congressmen who should be voting for it.
So you do think it has to pass in any case? That's the bottom line.
Well, I think the market is worried it isn't going to pass. I think that's what you're seeing today. But I do think there's a risk that it won't pass, surely.
Now, you're in touch with all kinds of companies, domestic-based ones, international ones. Do you feel a slowing in demand as, say, companies outside of the U.S. look at the U.S.? I mean, are you seeing a real grinding to the halt?
Well, let me explain something. 3 weeks ago, American consumers stopped buying. This is not generally a good sign. And that happened 3 weeks ago.
Two-thirds of GDP, of course, for us.
Two-thirds of GDP. And you're seeing it in automobile sales. You're going to see it in retail sales. It's a terrible sign. This is a 100% crisis of confidence.
Have you seen a time like this in the past?
Well, you had a time like this somewhat post the first oil shock in 73, 74. But at that time, it was the country was sort of totally shocked by the fact that the money was flowing to the oil companies and the oil countries. This is a different issue. This is an issue where the financial structure is being severely impacted, totally changed, and it affects everybody. People don't realize how dependent they are on banks and insurance companies and 401ks. They don't get it until you have a situation like this. This has a greater psychological impact.
I mean, we've heard that even some companies may sort of limit consumers' use of credit cards, may start to bring down what they have to.
Of course they will. They will. People won't be able to finance their inventory, small businesses. They won't be able to finance cars. Of course, absolutely. You've got to fix this credit system, and the leadership has been, it's just come at a terrible time. We have terrible political leadership, inarticulate political leadership, and as you say, right in the middle of a presidential and congressional campaign.
I have to ask you quickly here, the jobs report we got today, just kind of appalling, showing the weakness, what's going on in the economy. Have you had to make changes in your firm because of the macro environment as far as staffing?
Well, we actually haven't in our firm. Our firm is stable and fine. Would I like business to be better? Absolutely. But we actually haven't had to make real changes in our firm. In fact, we're hiring.
Well, that's great, and will be welcome news to many. We thank you so much, Peter J. Solomon.